Hi everyone! Today I'll be showing you how to crochet Rosella the Flamingo. As she wades through the tranquil waters, Rosella radiates a calm yet playful spirit, captivating all who watch her perform her delicate dance. So Rosella can be made in sport, DK, or plush yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today I'll be crocheting with worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to snag the matching greeting card to make an adorable and one-of-a-kind gift that your friends and family will love. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So we are starting on Rosella the Flamingo's pattern, and we're going to begin the body with this black colored yarn. And the first thing that we need to do is form a magic ring. So let's review how to get a magic ring tied and how to make our first few single crochet stitches. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn, and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand, and I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around, and then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit, and then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb, and then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand, and we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. And we're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position, so kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook, so I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to go ahead and begin on round 1. And if you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the instructions for round 1, and all subsequent rounds are going to track with us as we crochet, so feel free to reference the top left corner in addition to the written pattern that you already have access to. Alright, so round 1, we need to place 5 SC in MR, and what that means is we need to put 5 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring and of course over the tail we used to tie it for round 1. And then that number in parentheses at the very end, that's how many stitches we need to have at the end of the round. So we should have 5 stitches when we're all said and done. So let's go ahead and get our first single crochet stitch formed. We're going to take our crochet hook and we're going to go through the magic ring and under the tail that we used to tie the magic ring with our hook. So we're going to go from front to back, right underneath both of those strands. And then with the yarn that we're tensioning in our yarn hand, we're going to yarn under, meaning we're going to put that yarn underneath our hook. Then we'll use our hook to draw that yarn up and into a nice tall loop on our hook. And then to finish our single crochet stitch, we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw that yarn through the 2 loops left on our crochet hook. And that completes our first single crochet stitch. We also need to mark this crochet stitch. So I'm going to take my stitch marker and I'm going to slip it through the stitch. There's 2 little legs of this V on the top of it. I'm going to slip my marker straight through and then lock it in place to mark my first stitch. So there's our first single crochet. We need 5 total, so we need to make 4 more. We're going to make them the same way we made our first. We'll take our hook, go through that ring and underneath the tail, yarn under, and draw up a nice tall loop. Then yarn over and draw through both loops. So here's our third single crochet stitch. And our fourth. And then one more. And that gives me all 5 single crochet stitches for round 1. I can double check that I have the correct amount by turning my work on the side and counting these little V shapes that are formed. The first one's marked, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we also don't ever count the loop on our hook because that's the stitch in progress, so that will become the next stitch. Alright, so now that I have all 5 of my single crochet stitches, I'm going to do the magic part of my magic ring. I'm going to take that tail and I'm going to give it a tug, and by pulling that tail tightly, I'll close off my first round and form a circle. That also sets us up for round 2, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 5 stitches we created in round 1. So our first stitch is going to go through where our stitch marker currently is. So we need to take that stitch marker out. So keep track of where that stitch is though. Don't lose that place when you take the marker out. And we're going to slip our hook underneath that stitch just like how we slipped our marker underneath. So we'll push our hook through both little legs of that V. And from here we'll work our single crochet stitch just like we did in our magic ring. We'll yarn under and draw a nice tall loop through that single crochet stitch from round 1. And then yarn over and draw through both of the stitches, or both of the loops left on our hook. And then mark that stitch as it is the first stitch of the round, and we always want to mark that one. Alright, so I'll go to my next stitch, the next little V shape that I can find, which is my next stitch. Push my hook through from front to back, yarn under and draw a nice tall loop through that stitch, then yarn over and draw through both. Rotate a little more, go through the third stitch of the round, yarn under, yarn over, rotate. Here's my fourth stitch. And my last one, which is directly to this side, the hook side of my marker. So I'm going to go through, yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both. Alright, so round 3 we're going to be working in a new color. So we need to switch colors before we start round 3. So let's do a color change together here. We're switching to white. So the first thing we're going to do, we're not going to be using this black anymore. We're going to cut our working yarn, so the stuff connected to the ball or skein of yarn. We're going to cut a tail. You don't need very much, just a couple of inches or so. And then we're going to pull the loop here on our hook long, and then take our hook out. So to do our color change, we're going to slip our crochet hook through these 2 loops that this loop we pulled long is going through. And we're going to start going from the back side of these loops. So I'm going to push my hook through that first loop, the one that's closest to the loop we drew long. And then the second loop here, I'll push my hook straight through that one as well. So we'll have these 2 loops here on our hook and then this long loop pulled through on the back. And that gets us ready for our color change to white. So I'm going to set this down, go ahead and prep my white yarn. So here's my white. I'm going to take the white and I'm going to reserve a little tail and pinch it into a little loop here. So I've got a tiny tail and then the working yarn. And I'm going to take that loop and hook it onto my crochet hook, and then pull that loop through those 2 black loops that I threaded my crochet hook through. Then, last thing we need to do, we're going to take the tail we cut from the black and we're going to pull until it comes undone. And you can see that pulls our new color through those last 2 loops that we made in black and makes a white loop here on our hook. So one more thing we'll need to do as we work this next round, which is round 3, is these 2 short tails, the black and white tail that we left when we cut the black yarn and when we started with the white yarn. We're going to work these in for the first few stitches of round 3. So for round 3, we're going to be placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches and then increasing in the last stitch. So let's just start with what we know. We'll take our stitch marker out and we're going to be single crocheting in that first stitch. So I'm going to start tensioning my white yarn, and be careful that you're tensioning what's attached to your ball of yarn and not this tiny tail instead. Then I'm going to go through my next single crochet stitch, which is the one I just took that stitch marker out of. So go from front to back. And then I need to lay both of these tails, the short black and the short white one, over my crochet hook. I'm just going to lay them over the top. And then I can yarn under and draw through that stitch. It also locks those tails in place. So then I can yarn over and finish that first single crochet stitch. So I'm going to mark this stitch, even though it's pretty obvious since it's the first white stitch. I'm going to go ahead and put my stitch marker through. And we're going to do the same thing in the next stitch. So we're going to rotate, go from front to back through our next single crochet stitch, and then grab these 2 tails and lay them over our hook one more time. Yarn under, draw up a nice tall loop, and then yarn over and draw through both. Let's work these tails in for 1 more stitch. So we'll go through our next single crochet stitch, lay our tails over the hook, then we'll yarn under and yarn over. And from here we can go ahead and trim some tails so they stay out of our way. So first let's pull our magic ring tail really tightly one last time. And then we're going to trim all 3 of these, both the tails we've been working in and the magic ring tail. So I'll give them a quick trim. And then I'm going to tuck them into the inside of this black beak that we have going on for Rosella. So that keeps them out of my way, and that's also the tails worked in from our color change, which means we won't have to worry about anything coming undone. Alright, so we've done 3 single crochet stitches. We need to do 1 more and then we'll increase. So here's my 4th single crochet stitch. And then an increase. So to increase, we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches in the same place from the previous round. So we're going to be putting 2 single crochet stitches in the last stitch of round 3 here. So we'll go through, make our single crochet stitch as normal, and then go through that same stitch a second time and make a second single crochet stitch. Alright, we've got 1 more color change to do, and the rest of Rosella is worked in pink. So we're going to start our color change just like we did with the black. We'll pull the white yarn loop long, take our hook out, cut a short tail, then get our new color, pink, set up, then we're going to take our crochet hook, just like we did with the black, and we're going to slip it through first the loop that's closest to the top of the big loop that we pulled long. So we're going to slip right through that. And then we'll slip through the second loop, the one closest to our work. Then pinch a tiny loop here with a little tail with the pink. Put it on our crochet hook and then pull it through those loops that we wedged onto our hook. And then we can tug the white loop until it's pulled all the way through. And we're ready to start crocheting in pink now. So we're ready for round 4. And round 4, we've got some parentheses with instructions inside of them. And what those instructions are telling us is that we need to repeat everything inside of the parentheses in the order it appears, the amount of times on the outside of the parentheses. So for round 4, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first 2 stitches, and then increasing, and we're going to repeat that twice to have 8 stitches total. So let's go ahead and work our first 2 single crochet stitches, and since we just did a color change, we're also going to have to work those tails in for those first few stitches as well. So we'll go through our next stitch, lay our pink and our white tail over our hook, then yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop, and yarn over and draw through both. We'll also mark this stitch as it's the first of the round. And we're going to go through our next single crochet stitch, lay our tails over the surface, yarn under, and yarn over. And then we've woven those tails in for 2 stitches. That should be okay. Let's go ahead and give those tails a trim. And then we can tuck the rest of the tail inside of the beak here. So just kind of push it down into the beak. And that'll keep it out of the way. Alright, so our next instruction is we need to increase in our next stitch of the round. So we're going to place 2 single crochet stitches in the next stitch. So here's my first single crochet stitch. I'll place a second one in that same place. And that's everything in the parentheses 1 time. We need to repeat that set of instructions a second time. So 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase. Alright, that wraps up round 4. For round 5, we've got another set of parentheses, so we're going to be repeating this pattern of 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 4 times total. So here's my first single crochet stitch. And then I need to increase, so I'm going to put 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. So there's 1 repetition. I need to repeat that another 3 times for a total of 4 repetitions. So 1 single crochet, increase, there's 2, 1 single crochet, increase, and my last repetition. Alright, that's round 5 done. Round 6 and 7, all we'll need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, I'm ready for round 7. Again, just 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. there's round 7 done for me. I'm ready for round 8. So in round 8, we're going to be decreasing in each stitch. So to do a decrease, I'll go ahead and take my stitch marker out. We'll go through our next stitch just like we normally would for a single crochet. Yarn under and draw up a loop. But then we're going to repeat that same process in the next stitch. So go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then we'll yarn over and draw through all 3 loops left on our crochet hook to single crochet those 2 stitches together, which decreases the amount of stitches that we have in our round. We also need to mark that decrease as it's the first stitch of the round. And we're going to just keep decreasing in each stitch. So we'll go through our next, yarn under and draw up a loop, go through the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then yarn over and draw through. So there's our second decrease. Alright, so there's my last decrease. You can see this forms Rosella's head. So for the next few rounds, specifically rounds 9 through 25, we're going to just be putting 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. This is going to be forming Rosella's neck. So don't forget you need to move your stitch marker up at the beginning of each round. And we're just going to be doing 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 6 stitches all the way around. So I will come back here whenever I have finished my last single crochet stitch in round 25, and we'll work the rest of the body together. Alright, so I just finished round 25, and you can see Rosella's neck has been formed, and I'm ready to move on to round 26, where we've got another set of parentheses that we need to repeat. So we'll make 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then increase in the next stitch, and that's 1 repetition of those parentheses, so we're going to do that pattern 2 more times. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, increase, then 1 more single crochet stitch, and then 1 more increase. Alright, we're ready for round 27, where we're going to put 9 increases, 1 in each of the 9 stitches that we just created. So that's 2 single crochet stitches in each stitch, all the way around. Alright, there was my last increase. I'm ready for round 28, where I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. Then follow that with an increase. And there's 1 repetition of that parentheses pattern. I'm going to repeat that 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. that's the end of round 28 for me. So for rounds 29 through 32, we just need to put one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So remember to move your stitch marker up as you work, and I will see you back here whenever I have finished my last single crochet stitch in round 32. Alright, so I have just finished the last stitch of round 32, and we need to insert the wire into Rosella's neck and head. So I'm going to take this last stitch on my hook, pull it long, and take my hook out. Alright, so I have a length of craft wire, and I'm going to go ahead and insert this into Rosella's neck and into her head. And then we're going to take that craft wire and we're going to bend it so that she has the signature shape. So like a little curve at the top, and then sort of an S here at the end. And we can reposition this as we keep working, just kind of get a general idea of what we're doing. And then with the remainder of your craft wire, we're just going to bend it down because we're going to use this as the little stake that Rosella will be supported on later on in the project. Okay, so now that we have the craft wire inserted, we can go ahead and put our hook back through the loop we pulled up long. And we're ready to continue on round 33. And we're going to start by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 15 stitches of the body. Alright, so there are those 15 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to chain one stitch. So we'll take our hook and we'll yarn over and draw our working yarn through the loop on our hook to make a chain one. And then we're going to skip the next single crochet stitch. And actually we're going to be putting this wire through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bend it so that it's underneath that chain one that I made. And when I skip this next stitch, it's going to leave this opening for the craft wire to come through. So I'll skip one. Then I'm going to continue single crocheting in the next 8 stitches. There was my first, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and my last, the 8th. And you can see that chain one space, that's where this wire leaves the body. And we can reposition this neck so that it's even with that wire. So now that we have that wire through that chain one space, we need to send it back through the chain one space. We're going to kind of double it over on itself. So I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to pull it long, remove it. And then whatever length of wire you have left, we're going to fold it so that it goes back up into that chain one space and into the body. Just kind of doubling it over on top of itself. And then I'm going to take these two, now 4, so doubled over length of wire, and I'm going to kind of twist them together. And then I'll bend them so that they're going straight down. And from here I can reposition the head so that the neck is going the right direction. And that gets the head and neck positioned correctly, and this remnant here on the outside we're going to come back and wrap, and that will be the leg when we attach to the soil. Alright, so we're ready for round 34. Go ahead and reinsert our hook. And round 34, we're just going to put one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 34. For round 35, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the first 14 stitches of the round. So there are the first 14 single crochet stitches, and then we need to make a single crochet 3 together, which is abbreviated SC3TOG. So to do that, it's just like a decrease. We're just going to add a third stitch into our decrease. So we'll go through our next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, go through that next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then in the final stitch, we'll yarn under, draw up a loop, and then draw through all 4 of those loops on our hook. Then we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the remaining 7 stitches of our round. Alright, that's round 35 done. Round 36, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 13 stitches of the round. Alright, there are my 13 single crochet stitches. Then we need to do another single crochet 3 together. So just like we did last round, go through our first stitch, drop through our second, and drop through our third, and then yarn over and draw through all 4 loops on our hook. Then we'll put one single crochet stitch in the remaining 6 stitches of the round. Alright, that's round 36 done. Round 37, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 12 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 12 single crochet stitches. Then we'll do another single crochet 3 together. And then put one single crochet stitch in the remaining 5 stitches of the round. That's round 37 done. Round 38, we'll start by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 11 stitches of the round. Right, there are those 11 single crochet stitches. Then we'll put another single crochet 3 together. And then put 1 single crochet stitch in the remaining 4 stitches of the round. Right, so before we move on to round 39, I'm going to take this time to stuff the inside of the body. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to take the loop on it and pull it long. I'm going to grab some stuffing and then just stuff the inside of the body. Alright, so I've got a little stuffing on the inside of the body, and I've saved myself a little extra here. I'm going to continue stuffing as we add the next few rounds on the body. So we can take our hook, reinsert it into that loop, and draw it back down onto our hook. And we're ready to start in on round 39, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 10 stitches of the round. Right, there are those 10 single crochet stitches. Then we'll make another single crochet 3 together. And then put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches, the last 3 stitches of our round. Okay, we're ready for round 40. We'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 9 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 9 single crochet stitches. Then we'll single crochet 3 stitches together. And then put 1 single crochet stitch in the last 2 stitches of the round. Alright, and then before I make the last round of the body, which is round 41, I'm going to add just a little bit more stuffing. Here we go. And for round 41, we're just going to decrease in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so I have made my last decrease and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out and I'm going to slip stitch in the stitch that the marker was just in. So I'll go through that stitch, then I'm going to yarn under and draw up a loop, and then draw the loop I just created through the only other loop left on my hook to slip stitch. Then we can cut our working yarn, and we'll need a little tail, so maybe 6 inches of our working yarn. Then we can pull that last slip stitch until our working yarn that we've cut goes all the way through, and then pull on the working yarn that we cut to tighten that slip stitch down. Then we can go ahead and fasten this. Then let's go ahead and close off this last round. We're going to take that tail that we've just cut and thread it through the eye of our yarn needle. And then we're going to use the tail to sew through each of the 6 decreases that we made at the last round. So we're going to catch just the front loops of each. So we've been working through both the front and back loop. We need to get just the front loop, the one closest to the surface of our work. So we'll sort of sew up in between those 2 loops, and then rotate and sew through the next front loop. And we'll just keep sewing through each one until we have sewn all 6 of these decreases closed. Then we can pull tight to cinch that last round closed. And we'll want to tie a knot, so we're going to tie a surface knot. We'll loop our tail over the surface of our work, then sew through a little of the fabric of our work and up through that loop that we've just formed. Then by pulling our tail, that loop's going to wrap around our working yarn and tie a knot. Then to weave the knot and the remainder of the tail in, we'll sew inside of the body and then out through just any old place, doesn't really matter where, and pull, which takes the knot to the inside and hides the tail on the inside too. If you pull really tightly, it'll take some of your fabric with you. You can take your needle and just pull to bring the fabric back into shape. But once you've got the tail woven in, by holding it tight and cutting close to the fabric of the body, we can weave the rest of it in. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the wire twisted with the same color that we have on Rosella's body. So I'm going to grab some of this pink color, and I'm going to put a blob of glue here, right where Rosella's body and the wire meet. And then I'll fasten the yarn onto the wire where that blob is, and then start wrapping. And it's a lot easier to spin Rosella on the wire than it is to spin the yarn around the wire. So I'm just going to twist Right, and when you get to the end of the wire, we're going to add another little blob of glue, and then twist and cover that blob of glue. Then we can trim, and if you had any extra at the top, this is a good time to trim that now too. I had a little tail. That is the wire wrapped on Rosella's body. So we can move on to the next part of our pattern. Alright, so next up in our pattern we need to make the wings. So we're going to start with 1 and we'll need to make 2. So we'll make the first one together and then you'll need to make the second and we can come back and assemble it. So we're going to start by tying a slip knot and chaining. So let's review how to get a slip knot tied and how to chain with this pink colored yarn. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail. And then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it. And then with my other hand, I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me, that's my left index finger. And then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we have reviewed how to tie a slip knot and how to chain, we're ready to go ahead and get started on row 1, where we're going to chain 11 stitches. Now that we have 11 stitches chained, we're going to go ahead and turn our work and work in the second chain from our hook, and we don't ever count the loop on our hook. So 1 second chain, and we're going to place a single crochet stitch inside of that chain. So I'm going to push my hook through, yarn under, draw through the chain, then yarn over and make my first single crochet stitch. And I'm going to continue single crocheting in each of these chains. Alright, so there's my last single crochet. We're going to turn our work by chaining 1 stitch, and then we're going to flip that chain over, so we're ready to work back down the chain. And then back down this chain, we're going to increase in each stitch. So this first loop here, this is technically already worked in because that chain 1 we made is the stitch that's inside of that loop. So it feels like you're skipping over a stitch, but you're not. We're going to be working in what looks like the actual second stitch of the round. So we're going to go through that next stitch and make an increase. So we're putting 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. So there's my first increase. I'm going to continue increasing. Alright, so I've made my last increase. For our last round, we're going to be chaining and slip stitching. So to turn, we actually need to start round or row 3. We'll chain 4 stitches to turn. So then there's my 4. I'm going to flip my work over. And then I'm going to slip stitch in the first stitch of the row. And I'll chain 4 more. Slip stitch in the next stitch of the row. I'm just going to keep repeating that, chaining 4, slip stitching until I am all the way across this row. Alright, so there's my last slip stitch. I'm all the way across. I'm ready to go ahead and cut a tail. So we need one to sew with, so 6 to 8 inches of your working yarn. Give it a snip. And then since our last stitch was a slip stitch, we can just yarn over and draw through and just keep drawing that yarn until it's all the way through the slip stitch we made and pull to tighten. I'm also going to tighten where my slip knot is. And that is one of the wings complete. So we need to make one more and then we can get them attached to Rosella's body. Alright, so I have both of my wings crocheted. So let's go ahead and get them attached to the body. We're going to take them and twist them so they form sort of like a little circle with these ruffles around the outside. And then we're going to thread our slip knot's tail through a yarn needle. So the shorter of the two tails. And then I'm going to take that tail and I'm going to send it straight through Rosella's body, towards the back though. So I'm sending my needle straight through. I'm going to pull and then unthread my needle. That weaves the slipknot tail in and also holds Rosella's wing on the body so that it's anchored while we start to sew. Then let's go ahead and thread our needle with the longer tail that we cut after we finished crocheting the wing. We're going to use this tail to tack the wing onto the body. So I'm going to start by taking some of the fabric behind where Rosella's wing is. And I've twisted the wing already. I'm going to sew up through the center of the wing, sew back down in through the body. I'm just going to continue sewing, tacking the wing down. And once I've got the wing tacked down, I can send my needle through any point on the body since we're working in the same color here. And I'm going to tie a surface knot. So just like I did when I closed the body off, loop my yarn over the surface of my work, sew through some of the fabric of the work and up through that loop that I formed, and then tie a knot, and then weave this tail directly into the body and out through just any old place. Then I can trim both the slip knot tail and the one that I just wove in from sewing. And that gets the wing attached on this side, so we need to repeat on the other side with the other wing. Alright, those are both of the wings attached to Rosella's body. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so the last part of our pattern is to make the soil. So we're going to be using this chocolate brown yarn. And we need to start by forming a magic ring. Alright, now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm ready to start in on round 1, where we're going to put 8 single crochet stitches inside of our magic ring. So don't forget, we want to mark that first single crochet stitch because it's the first stitch of the round. Alright, I have all 8 single crochet stitches in my magic ring. I'm going to pull the tail to close the first round off. And I'm ready for round 2, where we're going to increase in each stitch, so 8 increases. So don't forget, an increase is when we put 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. So here's my first increase. I'll continue increasing as I go around. Alright, there's round 2 done. Round 3, we've got a parentheses pattern to follow. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then an increase in the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern another 7 times for a total of 8 repetitions all the way around. So 1 single crochet stitch, increase, Alright, that's round 3 done. Round 4, we're going to be putting single crochet stitches, but only in the back loops of each stitch. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and we've been working through both the front and the back loop. If you look at the sides of your stitch, you'll see this little V shape. We've been going through both sides of that, just pushing our hook straight through from front to back. This time we only want to grab the back loop, the one closest to the back side of our work, the side that has our magic ring tail on it. So to do a back loop only single crochet, we're going to go between those 2 stitches, the 2 little V's of the stitch. So we're only going to catch that back loop. And then from here it's just a regular single crochet stitch. So for this whole row, row 4, we're only going to be working in the back loop. So we'll go to our next stitch, go in between, make a regular single crochet stitch. Just going to keep adding single crochet stitches just to those back loops. Alright, that's round 4 done. For round 5, we're going to be working back in the regular stitch, so not just the back loop. We're going to just be putting one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 5 done. For round 6, we need to work in the back loop again. So just one single crochet stitch in each back loop all the way around. Alright, that's round 6 done for me. For round 7, we're going to make another parentheses pattern, where we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then a decrease. Then we're going to repeat that pattern of one single crochet decrease, 8 times total, all the way around. Alright, and for round 8, our last round, we're going to decrease in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so there's my last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off, so I'm going to take my stitch marker out and slip stitch in the stitch it was just in. Then we need to cut a tail for sewing, 6 inches or so. we'll pull that last slip stitch we made all the way through until the tail we made goes through as well. And then we're going to tighten that slip stitch down. Then we're going to take the craft wire that we wrapped and we're going to push it through the opening that we made, the magic ring. So just take that and kind of slot it through the opening there on the soil. And I like to give mine a loop so it doesn't pull back through. So I'm just going to loop it around my finger here and then flatten it so it hides inside of the soil. And then pull it so it sits inside. And that makes it so that Rosella's attached to the soil. Then we need to put some stuffing inside of the soil now. Alright, so there's the soil stuffed. Next we need to close it off. So we're going to go ahead and thread our sewing needle with the tail left over from the soil. And then just like we did with the body, we're going to sew through each of the decreases front loops all the way around. Alright, there are all 8 of those front loops for me. I'm going to pull to close the bottom of our work, then tie a surface knot, and weave that tail in to the soil. And once it's woven in, I can unthread my yarn needle and cut that tail so it hides on the inside. And there's the soil for Rosella, and one last thing to do, we need to add the eye onto the face. So we'll grab a little black embroidery floss, and go ahead and get it threaded through the eye of an embroidery needle. Then we're going to sew so that a little bit of our embroidery floss's tail is on the outside of Rosella's head. So I'm going to send it in the space between some stitches and then up through about halfway through the head and pull but leave a little tail on the outside. And her eye is a nice little curve. She looks very cheerful. So I'm going to sew a stitch sort of at an angle and then come back up about halfway through where that stitch is. You can see I've got the stitch sewed, but we want it to angle upwards, so I'm going to take my needle and pass it underneath that stitch and then pull the stitch up so that it's coming up towards where my needle is. And I'm going to send my needle back down through where I came up and out through this first stitch next to the tail that I have. And that wrapped stitch is going to hold Rosella's eye up into more of a cheerful shape. And then we can unthread our embroidery needle. And we're going to tie these 2 ends together in a square knot, just like we would if we were tying our shoe. And then we'll cut them really short, so just hold them together and give them a trim. And then we can take our crochet hook, slip it into the fabric of the head, and pull that fabric over that knot that we've tied. Alright, so there is the eye attached, and that wraps up Rosella's tutorial.